Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the AntonioTalks talk show. It's good to be back. I haven't done this show in 3 or 4 weeks, 5 weeks. How long has it been, Dylan? A long time. We've even moved offices. We've grown our team. There's lots of different changes. We're in a different location. But today, I have a great guest with me. A special guest, someone I've known for my whole recruitment career in many ways, since I joined the recruitment industry. Myran Perry, ladies and gentlemen, the best teeth in the recruitment industry. You might want to move forward, Myran, and
sure.
have a chat and say, how are you? How's it going?
Very good, thank you.
Good?
It's good seeing you again after a while.
Really good. And what do you think of the new office? You're the first guest to come into our new office.
It's great. I'm not... I think these guys seem quite stoic, so I feel like if I say something controversial, I'm going to annoy them, so it feels...
Stoic?
I'm not quite sure. They seem like good people, by the way.
I know. So tell me a bit more. So what do you mean by stoic?
I think it looks like nothing will unnerve them. That's what it seems like.
Ah, well, Ian over there.
So I'm probably totally
It
wrong.
might unnerve Ian. Ian, are you listening up? You're all ears, right? He's gone. It's all I can see is just his head. Right. So let's get into it, Myran. But before we do that, obviously we know each other. A lot of people know who you are. But for the people that don't know who you are, tell them. Tell them your story. How did you get into recruitment? Tell them,
Sure.
what got you to this moment right now, drinking a Heineken at 7 p.m. in the afternoon.
I think I'm like most people. I don't think I didn't grow up and want to be a recruiter. I don't think that's how it works. There's not a single person I've met in the industry who's come from that kind of standing. But I kind of stumbled across it. There was an old schoolmate who was in recruitment. I did a law degree at uni, thinking that was going to be the career for me. It wasn't. I worked in the legal industry for a year. Didn't enjoy it at all. I mean, there's a lot of smart individuals in the legal industry. I just think you have to be at the top before it starts getting interesting, and I didn't want to wait it out. I was a little bit impatient, so ended up in the recruitment world, to be honest. Didn't like it at first, but now that I've got past the main hurdle, and the main hurdle for me would be your first year, there's kind of no looking back now, and there's absolutely no regrets at all.
Yeah.
So,
Great.
That's kind of how I got into it. I think the interesting thing in terms of my career is that I've attempted to kind of reinvent myself a few times. So I wasn't really into management previously up until seriously about 6 years ago. Then I started to get stimulated by it, kind of seeing other people do well. For those that are interested, my whole background up until 5 years ago as well was as a contract recruitment consultant. Then I moved into perm, now I'm doing both basically. So that's kind of the history of my career.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. So there's a couple of things there. So you started with a law you were doing a law degree. Was it? So what was it that made that transition? Why didn't you enjoy the sort of legal world? Was it more just you thought you could make more money in recruitment than you could until you get to that top stage?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't a money thing. Like I know, I think a lot of people say that they're money driven when they're kind of like between 16 and 18, but to be honest, you don't know enough. I didn't know enough about the world to know whether I was money motivated or not. You have some kind of expectations of the subject matter you're studying. But I think at 18, it just felt like a safe bet outside of the medical world or maybe the accounting world. And those two are mainly for my parents' sake. But I kind of fell into the legal world thinking it would be really interesting. But the subject matter still does really interest me, but as a job, I found out within a few years that it actually wasn't suited to my type of personality. I think I've got that right, so I think it's the right decision. I mean, if I stayed in the legal industry, would I be as good as people that are in it at the moment? Definitely not, actually. So I think I've made the right decision.
Yeah, but I think so. I mean, I don't know too much about the legal industry, but what I see on like sort of movies and stuff like that, and what I see, obviously these sort of debates. I think you'd be really good at a debate. I think those sort of like basically selling the story of someone who is either innocent or guilty or whatever it may be. I think you'd be really good at that.
Yeah, I probably. it's so hypothetical because I'm not doing it, and I don't want to do a disservice to the people who are highly skilled and highly trained. But yeah, you always kind of fancy yourself to could I put up a solid argument in this case or that case? Yeah, you probably could. I mean, the people who I'm really good friends with in the legal industry will tell you that it's much more of a sophisticated science than just being able to argue a case.
Yeah.
That minutiae of what you just mentioned, I think, could I argue? Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Could I do it to the extent of what they do? Possibly not. I don't know. It's hypothetical.
It is totally hypothetical, and that's what a lot of the questions I'm going to be asking you around are hypothetical.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the recruitment industry, the state of it,
sure.
the state of this place that we live in. Obviously, we are in the recruitment industry. You know, this company Recruited, that's our name without the E, but we are technically not a recruitment company.
Sure.
Do you know what I mean? So, but we're in the industry. But I want to hear from you. Give me an overview of the current state of the recruitment industry, and I know that. You know, I think the way your mind works, that you'll give a much better overview than probably past guests because you're more holistic and you've got an opinion on it too. So
that's
great.
cool. I appreciate that. I mean, the first thing I'll say is I think it's a bit of a lawless industry, and that's not necessarily a totally negative connotation, by the way. I think it's one of those industries that I still think we're continuously discovering what it actually means, and things are evolving a lot. I mean, I've seen a massive. There's far more. If there's going to be more than 10 people watching this, there's far more experienced people.
We've got 350 views on Kelby, so do you know what I mean?
Well,
we get an average.
Sounds like a challenge.
We got an average 200 views, but you know, in the future there'll be millions of views on this. It's all about the future, Myran. We're building this and doing it when no one's watching, and then eventually people will start watching. It's consistency. That's what it's about.
Well, listen, if we touch one person, then
exactly
then we've succeeded.
That's it.
I think in terms of in terms of what I mean by lawless is that. Yes, there are governing bodies in place in the recruitment industry, but a lot of the kind of tactics that are deployed, a lot of the ways of kind of approaching the market, even the kind of the jargon that we use, it definitely varies from business to business. Now, the interesting bit, or for me it's interesting anyway, is that a lot of recruitment's guarded in or shrouded in secrecy because you don't want to lose your competitive edge.
Does anyone have a competitive edge in recruitment, really?
Yeah, I actually totally believe so. I mean, I do believe in the value of kind of selling yourself as an individual, so your individual USPs, which you can carry from business to business, wherever you go. But there are businesses out there that have got ahead of the curve. So I think anyone, in my opinion, anyone that is succeeding at the moment they're doing things before anyone else has done it. Not necessarily the best, but they did it before, and time can count for a lot in this world, I believe. And
do you think that's because people don't want to change in the recruitment industry? Like, the reason that people succeed is, and they're doing it before other people, most people.
Sure.
It's because like the traditional way of recruitment works in terms of it's a revenue generator, right? But is it value add? And as you said, this lawless stuff, you know, is that value add? And
I read for anyone that's got Netflix, there's a fascinating Dr. Dre documentary on at the moment, and Jimmy Iovine, I think is the name of his producer. He says this great quote, which I think is absolutely relevant to recruitment. He was traditionally in, I think, the funk and soul world before he even met Dr. Dre, and I think his view was, I'm willing to forget everything that's ever made me successful up until this point and completely reinvent myself. That's the bit that's probably lacking. By the way, I'm coming from a place that I've been in the industry for like just over a decade.
Totally, yeah.
There's people out there who've been in the industry for kind of 40, 50 years. This is just my take on it and my experience. And I think you're right. I think people get stuck in their way about, well, it's always worked like this. It's going to carry on working like that. Then you get into a slightly touchy subject about millennials and Generation X.
So let's just jump into this. So what do you think about these young whippersnappers like myself thinking that we can fucking take over the industry, or not even take over, but change it, disrupt it?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's good. I totally embrace it because I think...
I'm not saying you're not young, by the way. I'm just saying I'm younger.
I possibly am classed as a millennial, by the way.
You are?
I'm too much of a maverick to put myself in either camp. But I think one of the things I'll say about this kind of whole millennial thing is that you know, as a small, probably silly anecdote, I think people talk a lot about, oh yeah, but these millennials, they'd rather go to the gym in the evening than sink 10 pints. And my view is kind of live and let live, like just let them do what they want.
I agree with the former. I'm like, actually, yeah, why just go sink 10 pints for God's sake?
Yeah, but I think people.
But to be honest, I kind of feel like, you know, I've got my kids, I've done my shit. I'm sort of like not a millennial in that regard because I've got kids and I'm like a 50, 60-year-old in a 28-year-old's body. But I think the argument is that with millennials, I think there is absolute there is reason in and validity in people's arguments that, you know, millennials are a certain way, but then there's also the others, which actually if you have a look at like certain millennials who are doing things, changing things, and pushing industries forward. But I don't think it's like, I had someone on the show before, Martin. I don't think it's subjective to our generation. You know, I think it's always been the same. You know, at the end of the day, some people don't want to go and start a business and be entrepreneurial. Some people would rather, you know, be better at, or are better at delivering. You know, and that's fine. That's good because you got to know what you're good at. And you got to know what you're not good at. So those arguments around millennials, I think there is validity in them, and sometimes I probably think that, you know, it's just the same as any other generation.
Sure. Yeah, I do agree. I mean, I think for me, and this is not to everyone's taste, but I draw a lot of synergy between recruitment and sport. I do it all the time, and I think there's a place in this industry, in this recruitment world, for kind of everyone. It's almost like, so to use the analogy, it's almost like a football referee. You don't want a football referee who really wants the limelight and actually wants to be a footballer deep down. You want them to just be a referee, and I think. Because of that, I'm a bit more open-minded about people's roles in the industry, and that's the thing. I mean,
how do you think the recruitment role is changing?
I genuinely, I mean, I'll start off with a simple cliched statement, which is it's more about being consultative, and that's just a really boring way of kind of describing it at the moment. But I think it's not actually, and people will challenge me on this, but it's not just about the end product anymore. It's not, I've got an amazing candidate database. It's actually about the level of service. If you, and mind my language, you know, if you're a client and you're working with a recruiter who pisses you off but produces the best candidates, it might wear a little bit thin at some point, in my opinion, and I'm basing this on feedback from, you know, senior people in the industry who I speak to all the time. So I think there's that kind of level of service. It's like, would you go back to your favourite restaurant if the meal's amazing but you get terrible service from
absolutely, I love that, and
chef? I don't think you would.
I absolutely love that, and that is one of the things that I am, like, even with us and our client service, I'm always big on actually just delivering amazing client services, because the thing is, if you deliver a great client service and you're really close to your client, if you mess up, if you do a bit of an error sometimes, they're like, oh no, don't worry. But if you're not delivering great client service and you do an error or you mess up or something you do something that they don't quite like, it's magnified. Do you know what I mean? Agreed. Whereas if you're close to them, it's dampened. Yeah. So there's that whole piece around client experience, and it's the same as like if you think about back in a day in like the 70s or whatever. We accepted, well, I can't speak for the 70s, but I can fucking try to. We accepted.
Mother can I?
You can't either, no, exactly. But let's just try to. I think back in the day you accepted poor experiences.
Sure.
You know, you accepted them because you didn't expect, like, you just wanted the end product, and so you didn't really care. But now, because of, I guess, the competition that's out there,
that's exactly it.
That's good. You know, you need to. The differentiator is often the experience.
That's a really positive thing, and there's two things I want to say on that, which I'm really passionate about. I think the biggest step change I've seen in the last kind of 11 years is, I think previously success in the recruitment industry was measured by your internal stakeholders, or what does my manager think, or what do my peers think? Am I top of this billing league or whatever? Now it is definitely external. You know, the client is king, and I'm not using the word candidate because I think candidates believe they're our clients as well, and I think we need to start getting a bit more affiliated with that language. Let's
go into deeper into that. I'd love to understand that a bit more, actually.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's a strange world. It's a strange world we're in, because, you know, I can't think of many other services where you say to a prospective customer, you're not going to spend a single penny on our service until you're happy with it. It's a really, really strange concept.
Yeah.
So I'm a little bit torn because, I know, especially in a management capacity for the last 5 years, I know the kind of the blood, sweat and tears that go behind actually trying to service a client. So I'm really, I'm always honest with my clients and say, do we actually have your commitment here? Because I know what's coming. I know exactly the type of service we're going to give. But at the same time, clients to a certain extent are the ones that should be calling the shots. And that doesn't mean to say that we be subservient. I think a lot of people out there will understand when I say words like partnership. That's really what it has to be. And I remind clients all the time, it's like, except for retained business, of course, but for contingent recruitment, which is the bulk of our industry, it's like you're not putting your hand in your pocket at all until you're happy. So yeah, I'm kind of torn, to be honest.
So what are the pitfalls of that contingent model then? Because how often are you messed around in the recruitment industry? Does it happen often? I mean, obviously I had a probably veiled view when I was recruitment agency side, because I was a recruitment consultant. You know. And I wasn't on the perm side, so it was really very fast, wasn't it? It was very fast just to place these contracts in. But with a perm placement, obviously you get the mandate, and it's very much like you go and do the search, you go and find the person, and that's probably could be a 4 to 6 week process, right? So how often are you messed around? How often does it drop out?
By the candidate in this scenario?
Well, I suppose just in total, like how often is that drop out?
I think we're messed around a lot, but I think there's 2 reasons for that. Is number one, we're dealing with human beings. That's the very simple reason. The second reason is, I think you don't get the sympathy vote if you're a recruiter. If you go to a dinner party and say that you work in the recruitment industry, they put you there with other industries. I won't mention.
Let's mention them. The insurance industry. Is it?
This is your opinion.
It's always my opinion. The car sales industry, and I'm one for that car sales industry needs to be disrupted. Once we disrupt recruitment, we're going after the car sales industry. It's true.
Yeah, I mean, there's immediately an assumption about the type of person you are, or the type of service you're going to get, or the agenda for it, which is, is a really interesting concept. I was speaking to a very, very senior person at another business who I won't give airtime to in this chat, but he was basically, he had a really interesting concept where he said he was thinking about a world where actually let's not pay our consultants commission, let's pay them a really big basic salary instead, but no commission. Therefore, those consultants will just concentrate on doing a good job rather than thinking about the money bags. Now, that's a very interesting concept. There's a lot of people out there, such as Dan Pink, who talk about think about giving a good service rather than the money. And I find stuff like that fascinating.
And he actually, when I was talking about the car sales industry, he was talking about him, and he gave that case study of that company in the US where people would often come and they'd have more information on the car than the car salesperson. Yeah. So what they did was the VP of marketing was like, well, if this is the case, why don't we install iPads in every single shop and then let them come in and find out about the car on the iPad, and then we can just be there to guide them on that journey and create and facilitate that experience rather than facilitate the knowledge. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, we've got, that's the thing about recruitment though. There are some, not everyone, and I don't want to make any kind of blanket statements, but I think we are stuck in a little bit in that world where we are recruitment, we are distinct to any other industry, but we can learn a lot from other industries actually.
Absolutely.
And how they give customer service or how they revenue generate, and I'm never shy to say that to a client or a candidate. The bottom line is, we're not running a charity, it's a profit-making business, and I think people class that as slightly crass, but that's the reality. We are a profit-making.
I think it's the delivery of it though, right? So, I mean, some people would deliver it in a different way, and if you look at, let's talk about this cosmetics, even of the industry, but then we can talk about cosmetics of anything, right? And how social is changing everything, or how social is determining, I guess, points of view on people. So if you look at the recruitment industry, I think there's a tide that's now starting to wash over, which is where was the whole sort of Rolex wearing, suit wearing, and the sort of like real sort of like sharp looking, I guess professional in a suit or whatever it may be. I think that's changing now. I think if you have a look at a lot of the recruitment agents I know, they're not wearing suits anymore. They're and granted, they're probably like start-up businesses. They're like 10 people, but some of them work in like the architecture industry or in that place, or they work in technology and but then no one's wearing suits anymore.
Yeah.
So this whole cosmetics thing, do you think that if someone's wearing a suit and you're approaching like a head of DevOps, do you think that's when I start thinking, actually, what's this guy trying to sell me?
Yeah.
Because it really is that whole, we're so different. How would you know my business?
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, it is a shame because I think we're so keen to move away from that slick back hair, Rolex wearing recruiter that actually we're forgetting that those individuals that still remain in the industry, they're probably quite good at their job.
Yeah, of course.
So we mustn't go so far that we're just looking for something different. So we actually forget about those people who probably grew up with the industry and actually did it really well. But for me, it's the reason I'm interested in the cosmetic subject is, for me, ironically, it's less about how someone looks, in my opinion. It's more about their values. And this is why I think the role of managers in recruitment is absolutely critical, and I think that's where we get it wrong. In my opinion, a lot.
So do you think there's a lot of hiring done based on how people look? Is that what you're trying to say?
There's this unconscious bias, and I've done training on it, and there's no question it exists in some way, shape, or form. I think as human beings, we expect a minimum kind of set of standards that people adhere to on a daily basis. People looking, I don't know, not client ready, as one of my old businesses used to say, probably isn't going to work. But I totally believe so, and I actually think the role of the manager is absolutely crucial in recruitment. And
what would you say your management style is?
Don't forget, I come from a place where I was pretty rubbish at the job in my first year. I always worked really, really hard though, so I'm very, very understanding of the struggles. It's like no other industry you'll be in. It's not as sexy as you think it's going to be. It's an absolute graft. But my biggest, and I'm very, very passionate about trainees and juniors that start in this industry, and I've got a side note to make about that later. But I actually think, even as we speak, there's probably someone getting fired from their job because their manager hasn't done their job properly.
Really?
It's totally.
So do you think managers should be fired, like like football, like just managers are fired now?
Well, managers do get fired, but
I think predominantly it is more like there is more onus on managers in like other industries than there is like because obviously that manager's probably worked their way up. And they've had some success here and they've had some success there. So as a business owner, I'm only just thinking, even from my perspective, I'm looking at my management. I'm like, they're good at what they do. So I know they're good at what they do. So if someone's underperforming underneath them, I don't think it's their fault. It's actually just that someone's underperforming. But maybe that is the wrong way of looking at it.
It's not the wrong way. It's just there's also another way. I think we should try and complement that view with another view. How many times I've managed cumulatively in the last 5 years, probably over 120 people, and there's no question some of those people that I've managed that have gone on to do some really good stuff, like start their own businesses up and become top billers. I'm thinking of a few right now. They came from a place where they got fired by their previous company. Now, this happens all the time. I don't want to labour the point with the sporting analogies, but it happens in the football world all the time, happens in boxing, and I'm a big fan of both of those sports. So you see it all the time. Like, I think, by the way, it happens the other way around. I've seen a lot of superstars that they go to another business and aren't managed right, and all of a sudden, they're not superstars anymore. And it happens a lot.
So that sports team analogy, I keep saying to these guys, I don't say we're not like a family. Like business, like we're a family. We're not. We're a sports team.
Yeah.
We're high performing. Everyone knows their role. That's not to say that we don't care for each other, because every sports team has each other's back, and that's part of being a sports team. But everyone has a role. Do you know what I mean? Everyone in this business has a role, and that's why they're hired into it. And so I think, I personally believe that whilst we need to create great environments for people to work in. I think we need to create high performing environments for people to work in, because what you'll find is that either you really gel in that environment or you just can't do it.
Yeah.
And I've spoken to a couple of people on this, over the past couple of days around, some people look at our business and the way we do things and be like, it's very sink or swim type mentality. And I'll get a lot of comments on this video, once we post this out about, but what are you doing? How's that about well-being? But it's, to be honest, the people we hire, it's all about, can you do that? If not, then actually, because you won't be happy here, so you need to go somewhere else and be happy.
But I do agree, Antonio, but my point is, if you fire someone and they haven't been trained properly, that's
100%, I agree.
That's quite hard to take, because
I agree.
I'm really passionate about, like I said, I'm really, really passionate about juniors. I'm always saying to my peer group, to people above me, have we done everything possible to help this individual, boy or girl? Because we do have a duty of care. Like a lot of people in recruitment, and this is a completely separate point, but traditionally the entry point of a recruiter is between the age of 18 and 23 probably, on average. I'm giving an average here. Now you imagine if you're fresh out of uni or fresh out of school, you probably saved up 90 quid to 110 quid to buy a suit. You come into the city, you think you're going to live the dream, and then within a few weeks it unravels because you haven't been no one's paid attention to you. That's not right. And
I really like that duty of care phrase you just used. I think that's a great point. Absolutely, we have a duty of care, and you have to set people up for success. Basically, you have to give them the tools and obviously the training. But training often it happens in the role, right? Yeah. So if you let it, I mean, in terms of the way I'm meaning it, is that most people will find out whether recruitment is for them or not in a very short amount of time, because they'll know, and it's whether it's for them or not, because we'll just keep giving people the opportunity to just keep going, and we'll keep giving them the support, and obviously, so there's that's what I mean by that. But that duty of care piece is absolutely crucial, because, like you said, if it's the real younger, it's first job, someone who's come into the business and that's their first job, you need to look after that person, because that's setting that standard. But then again, at the same time, on the other side, if that person comes in and they're in a high performing environment, in 8 months, 9 months, 10 months, they're going to be far, passing like maybe people who've had 5 years experience in the industry. Yeah,
I think emotional intelligence is important, because not everyone's going to respond to kind of browbeating. Sometimes people learn with an arm around the shoulder. And there's a really, really, for anyone that's a football fan, if you watch the clip when Frank Lampard was at West Ham, he was getting a lot of stick. He was getting the fatty Frank kind of comments about him because he was a bit weighty at his age. He was only 17 at the time. And a lot of journalists were saying, who is this guy? He's not going to make it. There's a really, really famous clip on YouTube with Harry Redknapp saying, this guy's going to go to the very, very top. And I'm not trying to be a hero, and if people think that's my agenda, I don't really care anyway, to be honest.
It doesn't matter.
Exactly. Yeah. I totally believe in that. I think even just a kind of a small word or phrase here or there can make a massive difference to someone's confidence. Yes, it's a high-performing industry. Does that mean that everyone has to walk in slick and full of confidence? No, I don't think so. I mean, some of the best recruiters I know are completely introverted.
Yeah.
They don't go out all the time. All they care about is servicing their clients. Now, we should be very, very accommodating to different types of personalities in the industry.
Yeah.
Which I think we are getting better at. You alluded to it already, with the suit wearers versus the kind of the dress down crowds. It's not the only distinction, by the way. There's a lot more. One of the things I mentioned previously was that we are getting a lot better at the entry point for recruiters. So we are being a lot more accommodating to hire people between 28 and 37, for example. Now, that's great. That's exactly what we should be doing. There's people with life experience who bring other skills to the table. You can't put a price on these type of things.
No.
And I think it should be like that. That's the beauty of recruitment. You see a 40-year-old going to lunch with a 21-year-old and they're doing the same job.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it should be like.
Yeah. So do you think, so what would you say is the downfalls of our industry, like in many ways?
It's not as meritocratic as everyone says.
What do you mean by that?
The corporate world is such a
Do you think even the corporate world is meritocratic? So like recruitment industry as one, but yeah, so let's say like consulting, is that meritocratic?
I think consulting is more so. I think we haven't nailed the discrimination bit or the unconscious bias, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I definitely don't think we've nailed that. So we're trying to get better at that as an industry, which is why it's important that people kind of come up with or have disruptive opinions, because we need people to start standing up and taking notice a little bit more. Internally though, you know, if I can pose a question to anyone that's watching this, if you look at, I'm not trying to be cheeky or contentious, but if you look at your managers or directors, have they truly moved up the meritocratic ladder, or have they somehow ended up in that position? I think we should.
How would you move in? How would you end up in these positions if you hadn't have really truly moved up the ladder?
I think
and worked your ass off. Because like, how would you have ended up in those positions?
Yeah, it goes back to my cosmetic point. The corporate game is.
I think you're being a bit too safe. Tell us a bit more. Give us some examples.
No, I mean, I think one of the things I'll never do is give people airtime, like I said.
But you don't need to give them airtime. You can give scenarios airtime.
No, but I think people out there will know. Like if you're in the know, you're in the know. But there's people out there who probably say the right things at board level, or they know how to play the game a little bit more.
But do you not think that's part of like the whole corporate world? Like the thing is,
who says that? Who says so?
Well, so I'm saying so. So I'm saying like this is all a game. Like it's all a game. Is this like, are we performing right now? We're a creative agency. We're a tech product. We're not performing fucking brain surgery, right? So like the whole point here is that this is a game, right? It's you do the right things, you get to the next level. And that's the way I've seen my career, even since I was like young, you know, and I was working in Tony Guy as a hairdresser, sweeping hair.
Yeah. Do
the right things, you get promoted. Do the right things, you get promoted. Do the right things, you get promoted. And the right things are defined by, obviously, management, whoever these people are, right? So, and that's the type of thing that they expect.
Sure.
So that's the roadmap. So I suppose if we talk about the cosmetic stuff and is it meritocratic? Well, no, it's not, because ultimately, like these next stages are dependent on what the agenda is of that manager, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Or would you disagree?
I don't disagree. I'm not trying to shirk the answer, by the way. I definitely don't fully agree, because I've experienced this, and it happens all the time. Because I think you think about this is my issue with it, right? Now, whilst you could argue it's a game, and therefore we start to put some harmless connotations against it by calling it a game. We, on average, I reckon most people work, especially in the recruitment world, you know, you're in the office door to door. By the time you leave your house in the morning to the time you get back, we're probably talking 60 hours a week. Then you add the client drinks.
Part-time, isn't it?
Then you add the client drinks into it. Then you add the after evening entertainment, whatever. You're spending a lot of time in that working world. Now, if we're saying that's a game, that for me suggests that people aren't being themselves for a long proportion of their life. That doesn't sit well with me, you know, because I actually think if you're gonna like, I think it's important to be yourself as much as possible. By the way, if being yourself is getting to the top by being Machiavellian, then you know what, fair play. Like, I think fair play to those type of people. And do you know what, I actually admire them because they have a moral compass that's probably slightly different to the norm. And it probably doesn't keep them awake at night, but it probably would. And I'm not trying to be a hero. Like, that's just how I feel about it.
Let me delve deeper. I want to understand what you mean by that. Ian calls me Machiavellian. I don't know why he does that, but I want to know what that means. Like, what does it mean? Or is it just that someone's just enjoying what they're doing and they're just seeing it? Because the thing is, I'd rather see things as a game than get all caught up in shit and getting, you know, like internalizing things when a deal goes out or whatever, or when something goes wrong, when a team member leaves and you get really upset because you got attached to that person, you know. So what I'd rather see it as a game than actually internalize shit, because if you internalize that, then that leads down to more of a mental health route rather than actually, look, no one's dying right now.
I'm mental.
Do you know what I mean? So I'd like to know a bit more about.
Sure.
I think we're both mental. I think that we've agreed upon that. Unhinged, exactly, as you said before. So I think I'd really like to know, you know, what you mean by that.
I think none of these. I mean, I've purposely not tried to position anything as negative or positive. I think it's
Get off the fence.
It's up to other people to draw those conclusions.
Yeah, sure.
But I think the reason I'm on the fence, by the way, if I am on the fence, and I think I've been fairly forthright with my opinions, is because I'm very, very open-minded about kind of different personality types. I mean, I manage different personality types. I always try and look at things from a management perspective as well. Yes, people can view it as a game, and there can be a different person inside of work how they are outside of work. I guess the biggest reason I believe for the distinction in opinion is because I'm coming at it from a management perspective.
Sure.
Yes, when you're a manager, you can be a little bit distant, and I think it's good to be like that, or probably maybe keep people guessing or whatever, but that's down to management style. And again, you see it in sport all the time. You get the headmaster type of managers, but then you get the coach type of managers. Ferguson's, Mourinho's is saying he's not a man manager. Then you get Pochettino, and I'm a Spurs fan, so it's
do you think?
Had a few people look at me over there when I said that.
Do you think? Who do you think the best manager in football is at the moment?
I don't know. People look at. I don't know if people support actually, so I have to be careful what I say.
Liam wants to jump in. Who do you think, Liam? Klopp. Yeah. I don't know who the geezer is. I don't watch football.
Yeah, I think Klopp's up there, but he's an example of someone. In Liam's example of Klopp, he's an example of someone who lives and breathes it with his players.
Yeah.
So he's emotional. He'll punch the air on the touchline.
Yeah.
Where other managers are a bit more reserved, they're a bit more withdrawn. And by the way, both of those work. It's just completely down to your values as an individual. If I was a football manager, I probably would be the person living and breathing. I'd be running down that touchline. and that's kind of how I like to manage. But then that's down to me, and I won't make any apologies for it. And I'm sure people who are the opposite won't.
So do you manage? Are you more team focused than agenda focused?
What's the difference?
So I suppose if you think about it, sometimes the agenda may be that actually, it may cause discomfort for that team for maybe 2-3 weeks because they have to be grinding to get stuff done, right? But then then sometimes it's the opposite. So does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. I mean, when it comes to management, it's such a complex.
Because do you think that people should be comfortable all the time, like in their job?
No, definitely not. That's the quickest way to underperformance. People shouldn't always be comfortable. That includes the managers, by the way. I adopted that mentality long time ago. Even me, I come into work knowing that I'm dispensable. I'm not indispensable. Someone could replace me like in the next week. Whether they be as good as me or not is another question. But there's a lot of recruiters out there. There's a lot of managers out there. So no, I think people. I don't think the right word's uncomfortable. I think if you have the right culture where people have high standards, then you don't even need the manager there.
Yeah.
That's what you want. You want to groom your staff to the point where even if you're not there, they completely understand what needs to be done.
Yeah.
And that's when you've kind of achieved that high performing level.
Great. So how much of the market is dictating recruitment? And the reason I'll say this is because there's a couple of things on how you were talking about, and this isn't a negative connotation.
Sure.
Recruitment is lawless. We're talking about, the suit wearing guy as opposed or woman as opposed to the sort of dressed down. How much do you think the market dictates our industry as opposed to us just being able to have those networks? Do you think who holds the ultimate, baton?
I actually still think we do. And I don't want to contradict myself because I kind of talked about client being king earlier, but I actually think we do because it's so unknown what our service is that we can kind of mould that how we want when we position it in the market. It's the same as kind of if you go to a mechanic, for example, what the issue is. Do you actually understand what I personally don't? I'm sure other people do, by the way, but I'm not. I drive and stuff.
But I hate that. I actually hate that. I don't understand if this mechanic is like conning me. I'm absolutely certain that it happened last year.
Yeah.
Like I think I remember saying, I'm gonna. I called. So my car broke. No, this is a different one. My car broke down, and So I took it into him, and he was like, yeah, so we're going to need to replace the engine, blah, 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 this, that, and the other. And I was like, all right. And he was like, it's going to take about 3 weeks. So anyway, it's like 3 weeks had passed, and then I contacted the geezer. I was like, yeah, I'm going to come down and just have a chat with you. I'll be down like in the next 3 hours. And he was like, oh, no, you don't have to do that. I was like, yeah, no, I'm coming down in 3 hours. And it seemed like when I got there, he'd just taken the engine apart just so he could just basically say, yeah, we need to replace the engine. Yeah. But I wouldn't know if he replaced the engine or not, because I didn't look at the previous engine. Do you know what I mean? So, but I hate it. I hate that whole sort of like uncertainty, you know, and but that's maybe me being a control freak, probably, that like.
But it happens when you buy a cup of coffee. Like the price of a cup of coffee is really dictated what people are willing to pay. Like if you went to Pret and they suddenly up their coffees to £10, you're probably going to go to Eat or Costa or whatever instead.
Yeah.
So there are some guguidelines.
There's an interesting story about that, and I'm just going to diverge a little bit. But there was this. Do you remember the foot and mouth disease? You remember ages ago?
Yeah. Foot in mouth disease. I've had
foot
that
in mouth.
concerns.
Foot and. Yeah. So anyway, ages ago, there's foot and mouth disease, and they had to like burn obviously a load of like livestock from you know farms and whatnot. In Bedfordshire, there was this. They to burn the livestock, they needed them to be on pallets.
Yeah.
So they put them on pallets, and obviously burnt them. And in Bedfordshire, there was this pallet company. They were really small, like going for a year, but they deliberately didn't sell any pallets at that time. They were like waiting until obviously all the pallets in the other companies had run out.
That's good.
And so once it came to them, they charged like literally 100 times the price for these pallets.
Yeah.
Because the government were paying for them. And that's how this company became like literally multi-millionaires.
That's pretty good, actually.
It's fucking smart.
I don't mind that at all, actually. Anything when you think outside the box like that,
yeah, exactly.
I think it's pretty smart, actually.
That is absolutely smart. And the only reason I know this is because when I was on holiday 3 weeks ago, I met the geezer who did it, and we were just
pallet guy.
Yeah, exactly. We were
in Greece.
having a good couple of drinks, and I was like, mate, that is literally
good work.
You know, that's been the highlight of my month. just hearing that story. Awesome. So let's go into racism in the recruitment industry.
Yeah, okay.
Just jump straight into it.
Yeah, sure.
I think, do you think racism exists in the recruitment industry, and does it impact this whole meritocratic style? You know, how because I think the recruitment industry is seen as previously as very dominated by white males, right? We have a look at it's very dominated by that in general, right?
I think so.
I mean, I'm just talking from my perception.
Sure.
So what are your thoughts on racism in the recruitment industry? Does it exist?
Internally or externally?
Both.
Okay. I guess because I'm a cynic and I'm not really coming from a place that I'm using specific examples here, it must exist. That's kind of my view on it. It must exist. I think there are definitely businesses out there that make a conscious effort to try and address that balance. And there's a lot of, I think the one that's getting the most publicity now as a protected category is women. So women in technology, which I think it's about time we done that. Way overdue. So it's taken us till 2016 to start doing that. Racism.
Would you say that? Would you say there's a more wider issue? So obviously, absolutely, I think, you know, more equality in any industry is always good,
yes,
right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. But would you say there's a wider issue, which is, you know, it's not just about, you know, the ratio between men and women in the industry. It's more of a ratio around actual different socio backgrounds, basically.
Yeah. Racist internally, not really.
Yeah.
I think we're actually quite good. I mean, we're in London, right? I mean, I couldn't speak for any other region, but we're in London. I think most businesses are representative of our demographic in London, except for one category, and I'm passionate about this, is age. Unless you could argue that this is a young person's game. I mean, you could argue that, okay, how many 50-year-olds are still playing Premiership football? None, by the way, because maybe it's that type of role that caters for the younger person.
Good point.
I don't know the answer to that. I just know there's not enough people of above a certain age in the industry.
Do you think it's like? I think like it's gun ho. That's why. It's because like it is the Wild West. You know, it's lawless. Like this industry is the Wild West, and you know, you get into it, and most people go, actually, I'm here 2 years. I've done this. I'm not going to make money for this person. I'm going to make money for myself.
Yeah.
And so most of the, you know, the 40 plus, the 35 plus people that I know who are still in recruitment, even 50 plus, 60 plus, you know, these guys are doing it by themselves. They're just doing it, so they're not working for anyone. And actually, you know, I think that's probably to be expected, because unless that actually you want to work for someone, and that's fine. But the majority of people, they're probably doing their own sort of one man, you know, two man band things. They're just in sort of syndicate with another person or whatever.
You get. I see people get judged for it. I mean, I've got a lot of friends who are looking to get into the recruitment industry, and it gets posed to them a lot at interview stage, which is, you know, why would you want to report into someone that's 10 years younger than you? So they're actually getting asked this question. Yeah, I can understand it, but who are we to kind of question that?
Yeah, absolutely. Who are we to question that? Exactly.
To be honest, I'm pretty sure I'm correct when I say this, that I think age discrimination in the employment world is one of the last protected characteristics. I'm fairly certain of that. If I'm
Do you think in the next 2 years you're going to see more of a sort of like drive on, you know,
transgender?
Well, I guess anything. Like I think, but I think the thing is, I kind of think that the industry, and maybe, you know, and let's have a debate about it. But I kind of think that, you know, the market dictates value. So if you are out there and you're delivering value, like, you're going to be paid for that value. It doesn't matter if you're transgender, you're Chinese, you're, you know, whatever. It doesn't matter. What it matters is the value you're delivering, and I think the market dictates that. And granted, I think in the grassroots, there's probably some minorities have a difficult time getting into, or don't have the equal opportunities as other people. And I think that in grassroots. But I think when you come down to business and market, I think dictates it, and it's all around value, and value dictates the cash.
But this is my prediction for our industry, and I work in the technology recruitment world. I think we're trying to tackle things one by one rather than concurrently, and that's a big mistake. So we're basically saying, let's tackle the issue of women in technology. Once we've conquered that, then let's move on to the issue of race, or let's move on to the issue of age. That's how I predict that's how it's going to go, by the way. You can do all of those things at the same time, by the way. It's difficult, very, very difficult.
It's totally difficult.
It's really difficult to do. And I've got a really, really strong network of women senior candidates in our technology world, and they say to me all the time that the entry point for women is very, very difficult. No one's speaking up about the other characteristics yet. I don't know why.
But I think it's all around, like, just being a nice person. That's it. Like, fundamentally, if we take it down to this, I keep talking about this, all it is just basically just looking at people and how for how much value they can bring, and then just respecting that.
Yeah, when I talk about prospective discrimination, and I've got to be really careful with what I say here, because it is such a contentious topic.
Yeah, but it's a contentious topic. I get that, but it's also like, you know, we are just having a discussion around things, and so if people have comments they need to make, we can just comment and we can ask a question, you know.
So as an example,
if you need clarity around something,
I've worked with a very, very well-known client in the past who I no longer work with, and we had a big remit with them to provide them with X amount of technology staff, and we must have sent them, we're talking hundreds of profiles over the course of the year. Genuinely, they didn't choose to interview anyone with a even slightly non-British name.
No.
So we're not even talking about potentially, so again, I can't confirm this, but we're not talking about discrimination at interview stage or whatever.
Just that sort of name stage.
Even the entry point. Yeah. Like, they're not even getting through the door. So
did you bring it up with them?
No, but therein lies the problem. You know, if you're, it goes back to what we talked about, which is this is a profit-making industry. You know, who's going to have the guts to kind of raise that with a potential treasure chest? You know. But
the thing is, I think you have a duty to do that, right? So I think from where I'm coming from is that if you have data behind what you're talking about also, so obviously you're saying, you know, if you know the amount that was accepted, rejected, you can really pretty much, the data can tell a story. But I get where you're coming from, because you're like, actually, to be honest, we'd rather just make placements and because that's what's making us win. But I think that's where the problem is then too, right? Because we're not stepping each other up, and through fear of, you know, a client leaving us or whatever it may be. And actually, it's the same here outside. Don't worry, but I feel you. I feel that, and I'm only bringing this up because when can we get to a point where we can have these open conversations, saying, well, look, you've rejected, you know, 10 people who were the only 10 people who had, you know, foreign sounding names from a British name, right? So what's going on there? Because we need to understand that a bit more. I don't know.
Yeah, you have to be,
because that's the fucking
you have to be absolutely watertight in your opinion to even raise that with a client.
Yeah, totally.
You couldn't do it just on an inkling.
Yeah.
It's just how could you possibly raise that?
Yeah.
If you just thought it's game over at that point.
It is game over.
It's game over.
It is, isn't it?
If you've got that wrong, it's game over. So you need to
you need some concrete evidence there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, you need to be absolutely certain. But I'm a numbers guy, you know, and I think you know, you can start putting some patterns against certain numbers, in my opinion.
But I agree. You can't just start going in like,
no way. You know, I wouldn't do that.
I wouldn't either, to be honest. Just bringing it up. Awesome. Okay, so let's talk about this whole, and I think this is a really good segue into it. So I heard you talk about earlier reinventing yourself.
Yeah.
And so, you know, what does that mean? And also, you know, how have you applied that to, you know, your career so far?
Yeah, I think the main one is management. I mean, I was a typical, I think typical, you know, maverick, high performer. Like, I just cared about myself. So I was very, very selfish. I didn't really care. And then I kind of unofficially mentored someone, and then I kind of found myself getting really I was really stimulated. I was like, okay, I'm really enjoying seeing this person develop.
Was this pre-Argyle Scott or?
Yeah, pre-Argyle Scott.
Yeah.
And I kind of thought, okay, this is actually quite good. I'm actually enjoying this. So then I started to get a bit of a taster for it, and then ever since that point, and I mean, if you know, I can get a lot of references from people that have worked for me and stuff in the past. You know, I think, you know, they allude to the fact that I care a lot and I'm always available.
Who's been your favourite manager in like history?
There's no way I could answer that without.
Josh Finlay. He's been a good manager, isn't he?
You know, I love all of them equally. That's what I'll say. No, I think I don't necessarily have a favourite, but
who's been the most successful? So someone you managed and then gone on to do something really great.
Yeah, so I'm not sure. I haven't got permission to mention any names, but I've got someone who I managed who had a really bad experience in their first recruitment business, who has now set up his own business, and he's, you know, I don't want to make this about money, but you know, he's had a pretty lucrative year, shall we say?
Great.
In the year that he's
and do you think that's because of your mentoring, or?
You'd have to ask him. It's not for me to comment on, but I think. You know, it was as much as and he's written me a recommendation on LinkedIn, by the way, if anyone's interested. But as much as he might say, you know, Myran's the reason I'm doing really well, you know, it's worth me saying that he added a lot to me as well. You know, it actually develops you as a manager to manage someone who's willing to listen and who's that interested in what you have to say.
Yeah.
And he was that type of person. So, you know.
Do you feel like you learn then from your people that you're managing?
Definitely, because you manage so many different types of people. Like, there's only so much someone who's born and bred in North London who has a certain management style. You know, you can claim you're open-minded as all you want.
Yeah.
Until you actually meet someone who's totally different to you, and I've experienced that a lot. I'm talking different genders, different ages. People that are older than me I've managed. People who come from nothing, people who come from very affluent backgrounds, and yes, I absolutely learn from those type of people. So that's the thing about management. It's not about sitting on your high horse saying, I'm the boss. Like, you know, it's actually about, you know, you can learn stuff from your staff as well, and that's kind of the mentality I've always had. I mean, I'm just I'm a bit of an extrovert, so I think I vibe off people basically, and I think that's what I've always enjoyed.
And what do you think, like, so let's go into it again. I asked people this a couple of times, but, you know, we had this discussion when I was a consultant at Argyle Scott, and, you we were discussing around to be a good contract recruitment consultant, you need to be a little bit unhinged, right? And I get that. I know what you mean because but I'd like you to elaborate on that first of all.
Sure.
And then my second question would be, so what makes a good just general recruitment consultant?
Yeah, definitely. I can answer those two things. So, in terms of my comment about being unhinged, I think that's more of a playful term, which is internal to our industry. I don't think anyone outside of the industry would probably even understand where we're coming from. But I think contract recruitment defies a lot of logic that you see in perm recruitment. In perm recruitment, if a role develops someone's career, or if it's right for someone's domestic circumstances, or they're exposed to a new technology, generally they're the ways that you can kind of entice a perm candidate and say, look, I've got this great opportunity. Yeah. Whereas with contractors, and I'm again happy to be proved wrong, unless you're the very, very best and you have the luxury of basically choosing where you work, I think contractors can sometimes compromise on certain aspects because there's a shelf life on it. So this role's going to be finished in a year, then I'll move on to another thing. That's not always the case, by the way. I know a lot of contractors, and there's probably people watching this that I've known for a long time in the industry who are contractors that probably say, no, that's not right. I'm motivated by the type of project and stuff. Yeah, I agree with that, but there's also some other motivations that come into play as well. So I think my unhinged comment, there's a speed as well that needs to happen. I think the reality is you could, and this goes back to the management responsibility of expectation levels for your staff. The reality is you could get a client call you on a Friday evening and say, I need someone to start on Monday. So how many logical, normal people can reason with themselves and say, right, actually, those plans I had with my family or my kid or my wife, actually, they're out the window now because I'm going to have to work it. You probably have to be a little bit unhinged to be able to adapt that quickly in your mindset. I think so. Yeah,
I agree, absolutely. And but I think that's right. But I also like because I think also most contracts, I think actually, I don't think actually it's about contract recruiters, and actually I think also most people who have to work at pace are a bit mental. I'll just say it. If you have to work at pace, because you have to be creative around the approach that you take to it. Because obviously, if you've got 2 days or 3 hours to get people, you need to figure out, well, how do I get them? And it's not just often about a database.
It's such a good point, and I think you imagine, especially when you're working on a position that's very competitive, so the client has actually gone out to 4 or 5 other agencies. The best anecdote I can use for that is the client says, go, I need to find someone, and then you've got 5 or 6 recruiters running.
But you don't have a track. That's the thing. You don't have a track.
There's no tracks. There's more to say in the Aesop fable with the turtle and the
it's
hare.
It's like an Easter egg hunt.
Yeah, maybe in that analogy, the hare wins because you can probably take a nap. You can probably take a shortcut or whatever the case may be, and that happens all the time. By the way, happens all the time. I think the trickiest type of clients to deal with, and I'm happy to be honest about this, are clients that have never worked with recruiters before. They don't understand how recruitment works, and that's a challenge for us. Because those of us who adhere, and I'm not saying I'm whiter than white, by the way, but if we're talking about recruitment consultants who stick to the letter of the law, they sometimes get left behind, especially if it's a client that's never worked with recruiters before.
The thing is, like, it's not about law either. Like, I think I don't know if that's just a phrase, right? But what it is about is that actually just sometimes you have to just be creative. And whatever that creativity means, so that you can feed your family, means that you need to use that route.
I mean, I'm really the feeding the family thing. I look, everyone's in work. Not everyone, rather, but a lot of people are in work to earn money and whatever. I don't think there's loads of people at our age. I'm putting myself in that bracket now.
Yeah, you're in that bracket. Totally.
Who are comfortable enough never to work again. So there is a financial element to it. So I do agree with that point.
What do you disagree with? Come on, Myran. I'm
You
trying to.
think I'm holding back, don't you?
Yeah?
You think I'm holding back?
I do think you're holding back, yeah.
No, not at all. You're gonna have to ask me a question.
Well, I think, to be honest, I think I've asked all the questions that I've got. Apart from, actually, to be honest, no, that's it. So, what's your plan, Myran, for the next couple of years? What are you doing? What? So you seem to be really doing well in terms of where you're at right now. But what does Myran want to do?
Yeah, I mean, this is not my peak, and that's the most important thing I can say.
But I think it's not your peak, because what you said earlier was awesome, reinventing yourself, and
Yeah.
you're constantly reinventing yourself.
I'll always
great.
reinvent myself. I think it's very, very important probably in any industry. You have to reinvent yourself. There's a few industries where doing the same thing for 30, 40 years might get you there, but I don't think recruitment's one of those industries. So I think reinventing yourself is like very, very important. What's the plan? I mean, I'm in a very, very good place. I work for a great business at the moment. I have some autonomy as much as possible in terms of how I put my brand out there and things like that, which is really, really important. You know what? I'm very happy. I want to keep developing my staff. I want to keep making mistakes and learning.
Awesome.
I made a lot of mistakes.
What's the biggest mistake you've made?
What's the biggest mistake I've made? In my life or in my career?
In your career?
I think probably the biggest mistake is when I probably first started in recruitment. I had an assumption about what the industry was going to be, and that was my biggest mistake. I made an assumption and said, this industry is going to be perfect. I think I probably thought in my youthful naivety that when I got up for work in the morning, the sunshine was going to be like a big yellow lollipop, and the clouds were going to be like candy floss, and it's not like that.
No.
It's a dark world, basically.
All right, Myran, don't hold back.
No. I'm not putting it down. This is
It's a dark world.
Well, it's when I say dark world, I'm using that kind of tongue in cheek, but it's not as rosy as you want.
No, of course.
You grow up in recruitment. You grow up as a recruiter, but you grow up as a person as well, basically. So.
Awesome. Mate, it's been really good to have you on the show.
You too.
It's
Thank
been
you very
really
much.
fun,
Cheers.
really great. We are now going to go into a segment which is called Previous News of a Previous Day. And what we do is we talk about news that's happened in a week, and I want to get your opinions on it. So,
I've got one.
what's your segment?
Homebase was sold for £1.
Oh, so you hear this a lot. Homebase was sold for £1. That's the previous news of the previous day. So you hear this a lot, right? These companies being sold for £1. First of all, why? Like, why £1? What happens there?
I think that's an administration reason, isn't it?
But I mean, I'll buy them for £1.
Well, it sounds like you missed a chance.
Yeah, I mean,
It's gone now, mate.
yeah, I mean, but is it because they've got debt, and is it because they probably have you're buying them for £1, but actually you're paying maybe 250 million or whatever?
What do you know about Homebase?
I don't know anything. This is what I'm saying. Dylan just sprung this on me, but I do know I've actually never shopped in a Homebase. Have you ever shopped in a Homebase?
I think I have actually.
So this links into what we've just been talking about as well. So it was actually bought by a company in Australia
Right.
a while ago.
Taking our jobs.
No.
Bloody Australians.
So yeah, and they said that the takeover, so when they took it over, since then it's been an unbelievable disaster due to awful management decisions, clumsy execution, and a misguided perception of the UK
It
market.
was only £1, so why are they moaning about £1?
They sold it for £1 because of these reasons.
Right.
Bad
So
management.
there's no debt there. There's no debt or anything.
Bad management, execution.
So
get me in there.
Basically, it's
Exactly.
racked up 1 billion. They've lost 1 billion through this.
Oh shit. So okay. So basically, they sold it for £1, and now they've lost 1 billion because they're moaning about the fact that there's bad management decisions. Do you think they should probably just get like a transformation person in there, business change person at the top, and then start changing management? As if we talk about what your concept earlier on, if the management's shit, it's because the leadership is shit.
Yeah, that was just my opinion. Yeah, I think so. I mean, generally, the problems start at the top, right? There's no way I could comment on something as huge as the Homebase news, by the way, but there may need to be a change in leadership.
Amazing. Well, maybe you can comment on this. So, basically, on the previous show, we talked about how Kim Jong-un and Donald Trump were going to meet. Now that it's all cancelled, Donald Trump's pulled out of that meeting. Kim Jong-un's still going, look, we'll have a meeting whenever you want. I'm thinking there's some sort of conspiracy there.
Yeah, it's basically like a Tinder date where you then end up meeting. It's like you're talking.
Who's the disgruntled party then?
Got cold feet, isn't it?
Because obviously, if there's a Tinder date, someone's going to be a disgruntled party. Who are we thinking a disgruntled party of this Tinder date
Yeah,
is?
that's a good point actually. That's basically your question is basically who's better looking. I'm definitely not going to answer that.
But Kim Jong-un's cute,
Okay.
isn't he? But then you can't beat that. You can't beat the cheeks of Donald Trump. So who do you think's better looking, Kim Jong-un or Donald Trump?
This has gone.
Me. I'm not going to answer that.
Who do you think, Liam?
He's got a cute haircut, hasn't he?
Yeah, exactly. And he looks after himself, you know. And he's got hair.
And he smiles.
And he smiles, exactly.
Smart. That's
Amanda, who
that's
do
a
you
good
think's better
point.
looking, Kim Jong-un or Donald Trump?
My left toe.
That wasn't a question. Kim Jong-un or
She
Donald
has,
Trump?
I can confirm she's got a very good looking left toe.
He's seen it. Anyone else want to chime in with their
The
better
show's
looking
getting
debate?
weird.
It's not getting weird. This is
getting-
these are real life issues we need to
It's
discuss.
not an issue, is it? You're basically like polling them off. Who's better looking?
Yeah, exactly.
Neither of them.
That's what Facebook did. That was their first ever business model.
What's that?
So when Facebook first came about, there wasn't actually a social network. What Mark Zuckerberg had built a basic comparison. So you just basically say who's the hottest girl in in Harvard University, yeah, or whatever Stanford, whatever. I don't know what university you went to.
Yeah.
Harvard.
Oh, no, it was Harvard.
Who's the best looking girl here? But Harvard isn't in. I don't know if it might have been Stanford, you know. But anyway, who's the best looking girl?
Think
Or who's
about
the
the film.
who's the best looking
Harvard.
this? And then he got called in and whatnot, and that's how it started. So
I think it was the Harvard.
you know, I'm just saying that this is how we do. We categorise people. So who's better looking, Donald Trump or Kim Jong Un? I'm going for Kim. Kim all the way.
Oh, Team Kim.
Awesome. Right. Thanks, Myran.
Thank you, mate.
Really good show. What were your thoughts on it?
On the show.
On this conversation.
I think it's good. I think it's good. Like I said, I think one of the things I mentioned, which I'll definitely repeat, is that I think new opinions in the industry are very, very important. Otherwise, it's going to be run by loads of dinosaurs, and that's not an age comment, by the way. That's just
No, of course.
that's a mindset comment. So I think we need to keep
But I haven't seen an
disrupting.
18-year-old dinosaur. Just saying.
Maybe not 18, but you get there's people in the industry who have started when they were 16 or 17, so they're already in their late 20s now, and you know,
Do you think they're still like very old way thinking?
Yeah, it's not an age thing. That's my point. I think it's a value thing. Like if you hold those values, doesn't matter what age you are.
Yeah.
You've got an old way of thinking.
Boom.
Old school way of thinking.
Boom. Let's end on that. Fantastic. Cheers, Myran. Love
No
you so
worries,
much.
thank you very much.
Great to see you.
You too.